Hola! Today, you're going to be taking notes on what you need to know to conjugate verbs en el pretérito. Before we switch to the next slide, you need to remember that we use the preterite typically to talk about things that happen once. It happened, it's over, and it's done with. That's our most basic rule. This will get a little more complex when we add in the imperfect in the near future. First thing you need to know is how to conjugate los verbos regulares, or regular verbs. To conjugate them, you need to take the last two letters off of the infinitive, so that's the AR, ER, or IR, and then add, or añade, the appropriate endings, las terminaciones apropiadas. Para los verbos regulares AR, the endings you need to know are aste, o, amos, astes, and aron. You need to make sure that you have the accent marks above the appropriate letters, because if the accent marks are not there, the verb can mean something quite different. Moving on to los verbos regulares ER and IR. The endings you need to know are I, iste, yo, imos, istes, and ieron. Once again, you need to make sure that you have the accents over the appropriate letters, and be especially careful in the LA usted form to put the accent mark over the letter O of yo. Now, what you need to do, look at your vocab list, choose one verbo AR and one verbo ER or IR from the list. Do your best to conjugate them below in the preterite. Call me over to check your conjugations if you'd like me to do so. Once you're all set, restart the video and we'll move on to spelling changing verbs. Now we move on to verbos con cambio de ortografía, or spelling changers. You need to be aware that verbs that end with the letters car, gar, and zar, or los verbos que terminan con las letras car, gar, y zar, have a spelling change en la forma yo. The spelling change only takes place in the yo form, and after that, these verbs go back to being completely, totally, and utterly regular. First, you need to be aware of those verbos que terminan con car, the letters CAR. In the yo form, these verbs take the ending que, QUE, with an accent over the E. Some verbs you need to be aware of that end with car and need to write on the lines on página 2 are atacar, to attack, buscar, to look for or to search, criticar, to criticize, dedicar, to dedicate, glorificar, to glorify, provocar, to provoke, sacar, to take, to get, but to take or to take out in certain expressions, and tocar, to touch or to play an instrument. Moving on to los verbos que terminan con gar, G-A-R. En la forma yo, these verbs change to the ending ge, G-U-E, with an accent over the E. Some verbs you need to know that end with gar are apagar, to turn off, conjugar, to conjugate, jugar, to play sports or games, llegar, to arrive, pagar, to pay, pegar, to hit, and rogar, to beg. Finally, we move on to verbs that end with ZAR, or ZAR. En la forma yo, these verbs use the ending CE, with an accent over the E. Some verbs you should know that end with zar, ZAR, are abrazar, to hug, almorzar, to eat lunch, analizar, to analyze, comenzar, to begin, empezar, also to begin, lanzar, to throw, rechazar, to reject, and utilizar, to use or to utilize. Now, pause the video, and choose 3 verbs that you wrote on the lines above on Página 2. Conjugate them on Página 3. You need to conjugate un verbo car, un verbo gar, and un verbo usar in the preterite and el pretérito, and make sure that that spelling change only takes place in the yo form. When you're all set, restart the video and move on to Página 4. Moving on to los verbos con cambio de raíz, or stem changers, on Página 4. Verbs that change in the pretérito, or los verbos que tienen cambio de raíz en el pretérito, are los verbos que tienen cambio de raíz en el presente que terminan con IR. So verbs that stem change in the present will only have a stem change in the preterite if they end in IR. Some verbs with stem changers that end with IR that you need to know are dormir, to sleep, mentir, to lie, morir, to die, pedir, to ask for or to order, preferir, to prefer, and servir, to serve. Some verbs will change from O to U, like dormir and morir. Other verbs will change from E to I, like mentir, pedir, preferir, and servir. You also need to be aware that these verbs only have a stem change in the third person singular and plural, not in all the conjugations. So you're only going to do this stem change in the el, ea, usted forms and the eos, ustedes forms, only in the bottom 2 boxes when you conjugate. Now, you need to look at the verbs you wrote towards the top of the page. Pick one verb that changes from o a u, and one that changes from e a I in el pretérito. Conjugate it in the boxes below, please. Once you're all set, we will move on to irregulars. Woohoo! Finally, we're moving on to los verbos irregulares. The most important thing you need to remember is that there are no accents over the endings of these verbs. And we're actually going to group these into a few different categories in hopes that it will be a little less cumbersome, a little less difficult for you to remember them. First off, we're dealing with one group of verbs that shares the same endings. So at the top of Página 5, you'll notice that there's a batch of endings e, iste, o, imos, istes, ieron. No accents, and what it really is it's a mix of the AR and ER-IR endings. At the bottom of Página 5, you are going to see that there is a list of verbs that use these endings and that also have strange stems, raíces raras. What we're going to do is go over the meanings of these verbs, and you need to write down the strange stem that I will also say. And to conjugate these irregular verbs, you add the endings that are at the top of Página 5 to these strange stems. So first off, we have andar, which means to walk, and the stem is anduv. Next, estar, to be, temporary. And please note there's a typo on my PowerPoint here. The strange stem is estuv, E-S-T-U-V. The next one is tener, to have. The strange stem is tuv. After that, we have hacer, which is to make or to do. The strange stem is is. And there is a star there because the el, ea, usted form does have a separate spelling change. The el, ea, usted form hacer is hizo, H-I-Z-O. So I would advise that you put a little star at the bottom of your paper and also write that down. Poder means to be able to, and the strange stem is pud. Poner is to put or to place. The strange stem is pus. Querer, to want. The strange stem is quis. Saber means to know, but in the preterite, it actually means to find out. So when we use saber in the preterite, we're saying to find out. The strange stem is soup. And venir, to come. The strange stem is vin. Now, pause the video one last time. Escoge dos verbos de la lista de la página 5, so 2 verbs from the previous list, and conjugate them in the spaces at the top of página 6. Once you're set, you're going to unpause the video for the last time. If you take a look starting at the bottom of, or at the middle of Página 6, you also have a list of verbs that share a set of endings that's slightly different, especially in the ellos ustedes form, from the previous batch. So you have the endings iste, o, imos, istes, and eron. And what's really different about these, of course, is that the ellos ustedes ending is simply eron. There's no I in that ending. The verbs at the bottom of Página 6 also have strange stems, and they use the endings that are in the middle of Página 6. So, we have here conducir, to drive. The strange stem is conduc. Decir, to say or to tell, and the strange stem is dich, D-I-J. Traducir, to translate. The strange stem is traduc. And traer, to bring. The strange stem is trach. Finally, there are 3 verbs that are completely irregular, but since 2 of them share a conjugation, at the top of Página 7, you actually only have to conjugate 2 verbs, or write 2 conjugations. Ser, to be, e ir, to go, share the same conjugation in Spanish. So you're going to know which is which by checking for the context. So we have yo fui, tú fuiste, él, ella, usted fue, nosotros fuimos, vosotros fuisteis, and ellos ustedes fueron. And note once again, no accents. Our final verb, dar, yo di, tú diste, él, ella, usted dio, nosotros dimos, vosotros disteis, and ellos or ustedes dieron. Once you're all set, please feel free to call me over to check anything you haven't had me check yet, and move on with some of the practice activities. Gracias.